The Vizio M series of TVs has been a very popular mid-range budget TV option for a few years now. Today we're going to take a look at the 2020 Vizio M8 Quantum to see how it compares to last year's M series, as well as the very popular mid-range Hisense H8G from this year as well. Hey, I'm Nick. I'm a writer here at Ratings.com, where we help people find the best products for their needs. Before we start, it's worth noting that just like last year, there are two versions of the M series Quantum available, the M7 and the M8. Today we're going to take a look at the M8, which is only available at certain retailers and has a higher peak brightness and slightly more local dimming zones than the step-down M7. In this video, we'll look at the design of the M8 and then move on to the overall picture quality. Then we'll look at the motion handling, input lag, and sound. Throughout the review, I'll be comparing it to last year's 2019 M8 Quantum, as well as this year's Hisense H8G, another very popular budget mid-range TV. If you'd like to skip straight ahead to our test results, then see the links in the description below. We bought the 65-inch version, but it's available in a smaller 55-inch model as well. We expect the smaller version to have similar picture quality and perform similarly overall. If you own the 55-inch model, be sure to let us know if there's anything that doesn't correspond to our review. Overall, the 2020 M8 Quantum looks essentially identical to last year's model, and you'd be hard-pressed to tell a difference by looking at the two. It has very slim bezels all the way around the screen, and the TV itself isn't very thick, so it shouldn't stick out too much should you wall mount it. The wide-set feet do a good job at supporting it with little wobble, and the TV is made from a mix of plastic and metal, which is always nice to see in budget models. That being said, there is a little bit of flex around the inputs, but it isn't too bad, and the TV feels decently well built overall. Speaking of inputs, the 2020 M8 has the same inputs laid out in the same places as last year's model. The inputs are split up with some facing downwards and some facing to the side, making them easier to access if you wall mount the TV. On the side, you'll find a USB port, composite in, and two HDMI ports. When you move down to the downward facing inputs, you'll find two more HDMI ports, including one that supports eARC. Next to that is your optical digital audio out, as well as your analog audio out. And finally, you've got your cable antenna and Ethernet input. While the M8 2020 is advertised as supporting HDMI 2.1, it isn't indicated which of the HDMI ports supports this. This may not matter to everyone, but if you're a gamer and plan on picking up one of the next-gen PlayStation or Xbox consoles later this year, this will be important to get the best possible performance out of them. Though, since this TV only has a 60 Hz panel, which I'll talk about a bit more later on, HDMI 2.1 really won't make much of a difference anyways. Now we'll move on to the picture quality. As always, check out our website for an updated comparison with new TVs as we buy and test them. Let's begin with the contrast ratio, which is the ratio between the darkest black and the brightest white that a TV can display. A high contrast ratio will give deep inky blacks that make the image appear deep and full of detail, especially in darker scenes, and good contrast is generally considered one of the most important aspects of picture quality. The 2020 M8's contrast ratio is excellent, which is great for watching movies in a dark environment. That being said, it's actually not quite as good as 2019's M8, which had absolutely remarkable contrast, but it's slightly better than the 2020 Hisense H8G. Unlike edge-lit TVs that light up their LCD panels with lights only around the edges of the television, the 2020 M8 has full-array local dimming to help enhance the contrast even more by using lights directly behind the LCD panel that can turn on or off as needed. Unfortunately, the 2020 M8's local dimming feature is subpar overall, and there are quite a few issues with its implementation, and some bugs that hopefully will be fixed through future firmware updates. The most obvious issue with the local dimming on this TV is the amount of blooming, of which there's a lot. It's very inconsistent between different areas of the screen, which creates a blotchy appearance and accentuates uniformity issues. In dark scenes with small highlights, like a star field, some stars look bright with blooming, while others are dim. Subtitles also aren't handled well, and there's a lot of blooming around them. It's worth noting that we experienced similar results with Vizio's higher-end Vizio P-Series Quantum 2020 as well. Other than the blooming issues, we also encountered quite a few bugs, including the TV indicating local dimming is turned on when it's in fact turned off. Luckily, this could easily be fixed by turning local dimming off and back on. However, a more serious bug we encountered that we couldn't find a solution for was that local dimming shuts off when viewing Dolby Vision content. We also noticed that when the TV is in the Dolby Vision Bright picture mode and local dimming is set to medium, the screen flickers when it's displaying a bright static image, even though local dimming is disabled due to the bug disabling it in Dolby Vision mode. Hopefully these bugs will be fixed in a future firmware update, so again, check our website as we'll update our review if Vizio does address these issues. Due to the excessive blooming and the unfortunate bugs we encountered, the local dimming of this TV is a lot worse than both last year's 2019 M8 as well as this year's Hisense H8G. The H8G has decent local dimming with a bit of blooming and some crushed highlights, while the 2019 Vizio M8 had good local dimming with minimal blooming and crushed highlights. Alright, enough about local dimming. Now we'll talk about viewing angles. All three of these TVs use a VA panel, which offers better contrast and deeper blacks than TVs that use IPS panels, but often have very poor viewing angles, so the image degrades when viewed from an angle. Therefore, as is to be expected, the viewing angles of the 2020 M8 Quantum are poor overall and similar to both the Hisense H8G and the 2019 Vizio M8. Overall, none of these TVs are a good choice if you tend to watch your TV with a large group of people where some will be watching off-center, or if your living room is set up where your couch isn't facing your TV head-on. That being said, if you do sit directly in front of your TV, this likely won't be an issue. Alright, on to gray uniformity. Our gray uniformity test checks for issues where different pixels are supposed to be displaying the same color, but may not. This can result in distracting areas known as the dirty screen effect, which is most noticeable during intense movement, such as playing video games or watching sports. Unfortunately, there is some dirty screen effect noticeable in the center of the 2020 M8, and there are a few other spots that appear darker, including in the top corners. Unfortunately, it performs quite a bit worse in this regard compared to both the Hisense H8G as well as last year's 2019 Vizio M8. Next, our black uniformity test looks at the evenness of an all-black image and checks for issues like backlight bleed or clouding. The black uniformity with the 2020 M8 is quite a bit better than the gray uniformity and is decent overall. With local dimming off, the whole screen looks a bit grayish, but quite uniform, and with it turned on, the black level is much better, but there is some noticeable blooming. While it performs very similarly to the Hisense H8G, unfortunately this is a much worse result than last year's 2019 M8, which had absolutely outstanding black uniformity, one of the best we've ever tested. It's important to note though that black and gray uniformity can vary unit to unit because of manufacturing tolerances, so our model may perform differently than the one that you buy. If you own this TV, let us know how yours compares in the comments below. Now onto reflection handling, which is important if you plan on using this TV in a bright room with lots of light. Overall, the 2020 M8 has decent reflection handling, and it performs about the same as last year's model, as well as the Hisense H8G in this regard. It handles ambient light well, but struggles a bit with direct reflections, so it's probably best to avoid placing the TV opposite bright lights. While reflection handling looks at how a TV deals with reflections during dark scenes, overall peak brightness helps TVs combat reflections that you may notice even during brighter scenes. Luckily, the peak brightness of the 2020 M8 is good and should help overcome glare even in a well-lit room. While it's about as bright as last year's 2019 M8, the Hisense H8G can actually get around 100 nits brighter with regular use, which may make it a better choice if you watch a lot of daytime TV in a room with a ton of windows. If you watch a lot of HDR content, or game on a console that supports HDR, then the peak brightness with HDR is one of the most important things to make your image really pop. While the 2020 M8 gets a bit brighter with HDR content than the 2019 model, unfortunately it's still only mediocre overall. That being said, the Hisense H8G has a similar HDR peak brightness. And overall, if HDR is super important to you, you may want to look at some higher end options like the Vizio P-Series Quantum X or the Hisense H9G. Also important for HDR is the color gamut and volume. The gamut is a range of colors that the TV is capable of showing, and having a wide color gamut means you can see all of the hues and colors that HDR content was mastered for. Like the 2019 M8, this TV has a very wide color gamut, with near full coverage of the commonly used DCI-P3 color space and great coverage of the wider Rec 2020. Color volume is also great, and it displays dark and saturated colors well, thanks in part to the high contrast ratio. Overall, the 2020 M8's color volume and gamut performance is very similar to last year's model, and it actually performs quite a bit better than the Hisense H8G. If you play a lot of games or watch a lot of sports, motion handling may be the most important aspect of a TV to you. Like the Hisense H8G, as well as last year's Vizio M8, the 2020 M8 Quantum uses a 60 Hz panel, which may be disappointing to some people. If motion is super important to you, once again, you may want to look at some slightly higher end models, like the Vizio P-Series Quantum or P-Series Quantum X, or the Hisense H9G, all of which have 120 Hz panels. Unlike both the Hisense H8G as well as the 2019 Vizio M8, This year's M8 supports variable refresh rate, or VRR. We were able to get VRR working from our AMD graphics card as well as from our Xbox One S. While this is good news, it's worth noting that since this TV only has a 60 Hz panel, the VRR only ranges from 48 Hz to 60 Hz and likely won't make too much of a noticeable difference. Response time is an average of the time it takes for the TV to transition from one color to the next. Unfortunately, this is once again an area where the 2020 M8 actually performs quite a bit worse than last year's model. While the response time of this TV is decent, with only a short blur trail behind fast-moving objects, there are some motion artifacts caused by the slower dark scene transitions and overshoot. While these were present on last year's model as well, they weren't nearly as noticeable overall. The Hisense H8G doesn't have any visible overshoot, but there is some motion blur behind fast-moving objects. To help reduce motion blur, the 2020 M8 Quantum has an optional black frame insertion feature. This can be enabled by turning on the clear action setting. Like the 2019 M8, it works remarkably well, though it does cause a bit of image duplication with 60 frames per second content. Overall, all three of these TVs have a BFI feature that works superbly well. If you plan on using your TV for gaming, input lag can be very important. While most TVs now have low enough input lag that you likely won't notice any delay, the 2020 M8 actually is quite a bit faster than last year's model with both 1080p as well as 4K content. The input lag is almost identical to the Hisense H8G, and you shouldn't notice any delay while gaming with any three of these TVs. Okay, onto the smart features and app support. The 2020 Vizio M8 Quantum uses Vizio's own SmartCast interface, which is decent overall. It uses a slightly newer version than last year's M8, which is a bit smoother, but the two are similar. Just like last year's M8, there's a good number of pre-installed apps, but unfortunately there's no app store, so you can't add any more. On the other hand, the Hisense H8G uses Android TV, which gives you access to a ton of apps through Android TV's Google Play Store. The 2020 Vizio M8 Quantum has a slightly different remote than last year's model, though the two feature most of the same functionality, just with slightly differently shaped buttons. Lastly, let's take a look at the sound quality. As is to be expected from built-in TV speakers, the sound is only mediocre overall. It delivers dialogue clearly, but like most TVs, there's a noticeable lack of bass. It performs a bit worse than last year's 2019 M8, though the differences likely won't be that noticeable. The Hisense H8G actually has a bit more bass, but again, those speakers are only okay, and overall you'll have a much more enjoyable and immersive experience by adding a dedicated speaker system or even a decent budget soundbar. So overall, the 2020 Vizio M8 Quantum performs good for most uses, though it lacks in comparison to last year's model, and is actually quite a bit worse for most use cases, which is quite a shame. The 2020 Hisense H8G performs better for almost every use than the 2020 Vizio M8, and is currently our pick for the best budget TV of 2020. So that's it. What do you think of the Vizio M8 Quantum 2020? Will you be getting it, or do you think the Hisense H8G is better value? Let us know what you think below. You can also check out all of the measurements on our website. And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel or become an insider on our website for access to our latest test results first. Also, we're currently hiring in our offices in Montreal for various positions. So if you want to help people find the best products for their needs, have a look at the careers page on our website. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.